So the latest WWE Performance Center class has been revealed, and as expected, it features a few former names from Impact Wrestling. One being, of course, the former Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion Taya Valkyrie. Now, obviously, this is actually the largest recruit class in the history of the WWE Performance Center, which does sort of make you wonder, doesn't it? Because of course it was only about a year or so ago, just under a year ago, and of course in around March and April time when the pandemic first hit, that WWE released so many talents off their roster, and now 12 months later they're recruiting the largest class in WWE Performance Center history. Certainly very interesting, isn't it? Nevertheless, it featured a plethora of talent on there. It also features the most female recruits of any class ever at 10, one being, as I mentioned, the former Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion Taya Valkyrie. Now, for each person that was recruited by WWE, WWE has written a little bio about them and spoken about what they've done in the past. It was interesting when they mentioned Taya Valkyrie because they didn't exactly go really in depth to the former Knockouts champion's history. Now, they refer to her by her real name, Kira Magnin Forster. They said, quote, known to wrestling fans as Taya Valkyrie, is an 11-year veteran of the Squared Circle. A classically trained ballerina, Forster learned wrestling under Lance Storm before breaking out in Mexico for the AAA promotion. She has competed around the world since. Now, that is certainly a very interesting way to describe Taya Valkyrie, isn't it? Because, of course, everyone knows her from AAA. She's worked for AAA, as they mentioned, for years at this point. But arguably in North America, she's best known for her recent work with Impact Wrestling. Now, obviously, I know as well she has a history when it comes to Lucha Underground. That was really, in terms of the North American market, that was a real breakout time for her, especially the matches she had against the likes of Brian Cage, the partnership with Johnny Mundo, her eventual husband, John Morrison. But it's in recent years, of course, that she's been in Impact Wrestling that everyone's familiar with her work because of, isn't it? She's the longest reigning Knockouts champion in the promotion's history, one of the best, if not the best, women's wrestler on the roster during her time there with Impact Wrestling, and that's a very, very high compliment considering how strong their women's division is. Now, obviously, the cynics out there and the conspiracy theorists could look into WWE describing Taya Valkyrie in that way, not mentioning Impact Wrestling, or at least omitting the Impact Wrestling history there as a knock at Impact Wrestling, or they're in the league with AEW at the moment. They're in partnership with AEW. AEW and Impact Wrestling have a working relationship. That's why they're not referencing Impact Wrestling. Maybe. I mean, I would think that would be unbelievably petty. But from what I'm aware in the past, when we've had these former recruits of the Performance Center that have been a part of Impact Wrestling, do we know if in the past that they've mentioned Impact Wrestling before? I feel like they have. I mean, this is the same company that for a variety of WWE Network documentaries and WWE Network series, they're more than happy to talk about TNA or Impact Wrestling, going as far as licensing Impact Wrestling footage and pictures to use on these network projects, whether it's talking about AJ Styles, Sting, Samoa Joe, you name it. They're more than happy to talk about Impact Wrestling. A couple of years ago on Monday Night Raw, Kurt Angle even referenced TNA when talking to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So it feels very strange, very, very strange that in this press release talking about these latest class of talents reporting to the Performance Center that they wouldn't reference Impact Wrestling. That just seems really odd, doesn't it? And as I mentioned, you can look into that a variety of ways. I don't know. But it confirms what we already knew. Everyone really knew that Taya Valkyrie had signed with WWE. It was not a very well kept secret. It hadn't been officially announced or anything like that, but everyone knew that Taya Valkyrie had signed with WWE. It had been reported at least 2 or 3 weeks ago. We'd done a video talking about it here. I think we've done a couple of videos talking about it here on the channel. And my opinion about it hasn't changed since. It's a exceptional signing for WWE. As I mentioned, Taya Valkyrie, she really is one of the best female wrestlers in the world. If you look at her period of time, not just in Impact Wrestling, but in AAA and Lucha Underground, you are aware of what she's capable of. But then her work in Impact Wrestling really solidified that. I mean, if you're a female wrestler and you want to prove that you can go, or you want to prove that you really are the top of your game, you would go to an Impact Wrestling, because outside of WWE, because I do think that WWE probably has the best women's division in the world at this point, definitely North America. Obviously an argument could be made about, the Joshi wrestlers and Stardom over there in Japan, but certainly in North America, WWE just has the strongest women's division, and I think that's not just because they have the largest amount of female talent under contract. I think that does play a part in it, but you look at the way that they're booking female talent, and that's changed over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. women are main eventing WrestleMania at this point, and some of the biggest stars in WWE are female performers now, whether it is Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey, Asuka. The list goes on, and then it goes to, that's just the WWE main roster side of things. Then also you've got talent in NXT like Io Shirai. I know Rhea Ripley's now on going to Monday Night Raw, but you've also got Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez. I mean, the list goes, it's infinite, it feels like, when it comes to WWE, and their perception of female wrestling has, fundamentally changed. And their booking of women's wrestling has also fundamentally changed. As I mentioned, female wrestlers are some of the most overperformers on the roster right now. And arguably, since the Performance Center and NXT's really become a thing, the one thing that WWE have got right in terms of building new stars is female performers. WWE can't build a male star, a male performer from the ground up when it comes to the Performance Center or NXT for their life. But since the implementation of NXT and the Performance Center, they've built so many female top tier stars, whether it is, as I mentioned, Becky Lynch, Bayley, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, I think was at FCW before that. In comparison to the male side of things, name one big star that WWE homegrown have made since the Performance Center became a thing in 2013. You'll struggle. And people will say, well, what about Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Jon Moxley? They were all in FCW beforehand. And they'll go, what about Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Keith Lee, and those names? They were all big stars on the independent scene beforehand, whether it was Ring of Honor or Evolve or other names like that. WWE hasn't recruited or built any homegrown stars from the male side of things for a long, long time. The closest person would probably be Braun Strowman. And if Braun Strowman's your top talent that you've created and fostered yourself in the Performance Center era, that's not great. No disrespect to Braun Strowman, that's not great. So my long-winded tangent point there is that Taya Valkyrie is stepping into a really strong women's division in WWE. She's stepping into a company that obviously values women's wrestling. She's stepping into a company where females have main evented WrestleMania, and I think they will again. And I think Taya Valkyrie will thrive. I really do. The only thing that I would say about Taya Valkyrie is, frankly, I don't think she really needs to do the NXT circuit at this point. I think she's 37, 38 years of age, so the time is ticking when it comes to her pro wrestling career. And given her experience in AAA and Lucha Underground and Impact Wrestling, obviously she can do NXT, and I think she'll be very successful in NXT. And to be honest, it's February now. By December, I could see her being the NXT Women's Champion. I really could. I don't think that's impossible in the slightest. If anything, I'd be surprised if it didn't happen. She's just that talented. But if it was me, I would be saying, look, we know what she's capable of, especially on the Monday Night Raw side of things. I think we need more female talent, and I think we need stronger female talent. Not to say that there isn't strong female talent there, but it's the Charlotte Flair show, frankly. I know Rhea Ripley's going to Monday Night Raw, which is really important. But Taya Valkyrie, for me, you've got The Miz and John Morrison on Raw already. She could just go straight into that. She really could. Obviously, she's got the connections with John Morrison being her husband, but I look at it as a similar scenario to the Miz-Taraj in 2016-2017, right? When the Miz had his Miz-Taraj, it was Maurice, Bo Dallas, and Curtis Axel at the time. Maybe a play on MNN with Mercury Nitro and Melina back in the day as well. Why not have a faction where it's Miz, Morrison, and Taya Valkyrie? I think that could be something really, really interesting. And I think Taya Valkyrie wouldn't struggle at all. I think she's got the character to pull it off. Obviously, she's got the in-ring skills to pull it off as well. And I think it'd be a breath of fresh air. Ultimately, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It's a very, very, very rare star that comes in now that goes straight to the main roster. They either have to have had a lengthy history with WWE anyway, like a John Morrison, or they have to be such a big free agent star like an AJ Styles where they can go straight to the main roster. It kind of looks like this is the process. But I would suspect that Taya Valkyrie might be the same as a Karrion Kross in the sense that there are plans for her on the main roster pretty soon, and it's just a formality to do the NXT run. But certainly it's a very big signing for WWE. It's a smart signing, I think, for Taya Valkyrie. Given the choices of options out there, I mentioned this before, I think AEW are doing the right thing in terms of improving their women's division. I think the women's title eliminator tournament has definitely been a big factor in that. Certainly a more spotlight onto their women's wrestling division. But if you want to go and thrive as a women's wrestler right now in North America, you go to WWE or you go to Impact, and Taya Valkyrie's just come from Impact Wrestling. So WWE is the next natural step for her, and I think she'll thrive there. I really do. I think she'll thrive there. So it's a big signing for WWE. But as I mentioned, it wasn't the the only former Impact Wrestling star that they've signed, the other being Blake Christian. Now, this one was really interesting, wasn't it, when it comes to Blake Christian, because it felt like he'd only just arrived when it came to being in Impact Wrestling, of course, didn't it? Because Blake Christian, he obviously appeared recently in Impact Wrestling. Of course, when it comes to the Super X Cup tournament final, he got to there, and they were pushing him very hard on Impact Wrestling television, weren't they? They were saying about this guy that can be anything. He could really do great stuff. All of his stuff in the ring, it was fantastic. You'll be shocked when you see the work that he does. All this kind of stuff. And now suddenly he's with WWE. It's like, oh, that happened quickly. This is the bio that WWE gave him. Quote, Christian Hubble is a former college cheerleader who has broken out in the independent scene in recent months. They mean Impact Wrestling. The Tennessee native made a name for himself under the moniker Blake Christian in promotions like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and Game Changer Wrestling. Of course, not mentioning, once again, Impact Wrestling in that breath. Again, it was surprising. It was surprising, this one, because of how heavily he had been featured on Impact Wrestling television as of late. As I mentioned, getting to that Super X Cup tournament final in January at Genesis, losing to Ace Austin, and since then being heavily featured in the X Division title scene. I guess this is part of the problem when it comes to Impact Wrestling, is that there are a lot of talents there that aren't under full-time contracts or aren't under exclusive contracts. A lot of talents there come in to work the TV tapings. For one TV taping, work for a couple of days. Of course, we know how Impact Wrestling tapes their shows. They tape, 4 or 5 days worth, and that works out as about 6-7 weeks worth of television. So if they book Blake Christian for that amount of time, they've got him on TV for 7 weeks, but he's not under contract. And ultimately, I know Impact Wrestling nowadays is actually quite well backed when it comes to Anthem, but everyone has budgets, and they can only budget for a certain amount of full-time exclusive talents on their roster. I don't know if they were going to get there eventually for Blake Christian. I don't know. But it does go to show that WWE is watching, doesn't it? And when it came to WWE and Impact Wrestling recently, we'd seen those reports, hadn't we, where it was revealed that WWE had been reaching out to a variety of Impact Wrestling talent, asking them, one, if they were under contract, and two, if they were, when did their contract expire? When it comes to people like Taya Valkyrie, obviously they found out that it was a couple of months ago. When it comes to Blake Christian, they obviously found out that he wasn't actually under a contract anyway. And again, this is the good thing and the bad thing, I suppose, when it comes to Impact. The good thing about not having certain talents under contract is that you can get in a James Storm, a Matt Cardona, whoever, because you can pitch them, look, we don't want you under contract for a long period of time. We know you don't really want to settle down in terms of being in a full-time contract or long-term contract with another company. Come in, work a couple of TV tapings, see how you feel. If you like it, we can talk. If you just prefer to do a date-to-date appearance, we can do that as well. That's the positive side of things. But the negative side of things when it comes to stuff like that is you have people like Blake Christian who have excellent performances in Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling provides them the platform to really get their name out there more than it was previously, with things like the Super X Cup tournament and his performances on Impact Wrestling. And then you see a WWE come calling and they say, look, we want you. And obviously it's the WWE at the end of the day. I know we've spoken about this before, but for most people, not everyone, I know Darby Allin is an exception to that, but for most people, going to WWE is the ultimate dream, isn't it? It's the company, it's the promotion that they watched when they were growing up. It's the company that they've always wanted to work for. They want to appear at a WrestleMania. They want to appear at a Royal Rumble, at a SummerSlam, at a Survivor Series, and go overseas and do these big tours and these big shows, and they want to just work for the WWE. They want to appear on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. They want to be inside of a WWE ring. That's why most people get into pro wrestling. So when the big company does come calling and you're not under contract with Impact Wrestling, WWE are going to snap you up. And we've heard these stories before when it comes to the AEW side of things as well, because obviously a lot of talent that appears on the AEW Dark show, a lot of the time they're not under contract. They're just coming in to work the show. It's for AEW to get another look at them, to get a better look at them, whatever. And we've heard those stories time and time again, whether it's Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ben Carr obviously did end up signing with WWE. He went to NXT UK, but Ricky Starks and Hobbs, they mentioned a similar kind of situation where they came in, worked with AEW for a couple of weeks. WWE knew that they weren't under contract, so they reach out and say, look, we're really interested in you. Do you want to come in? We'll sign you to a contract straight away. You can be part of the Performance Center. You can be part of NXT. And In the case of Ricky Starks and Hobbs, they've kind of said, look, we had tryouts with you before and you weren't interested, then suddenly we appear on AEW television and suddenly you're interested. Do I think it's a similar situation with Blake Christian? Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't think it's any criticism of Blake Christian. I don't think it's any criticism of the WWE. If you find out that good talent is out there and they're not under contract and they're available, it's stupid to not ask them if they want to come in. Not only are you gaining good talent, but it does hurt your competitor. And at the end of the day, this is a business. This is a business. So Blake Christian, for me, will he succeed in WWE? I think he'll do well in NXT. The main roster, I think, is going to be tough. Because you look at the size of Blake Christian, and again, it's crazy that in 2021 we're still talking about the size of competitors and the promo abilities and stuff like that, but that's how the WWE, that's how Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard's minds work when it comes to talent and characters in WWE. I think in NXT, when you have the Cruiserweight Championships specific to NXT, I think Blake Christian is an obvious choice, and I think he'd have fantastic matches in NXT for that Cruiserweight title. And to be honest, we probably need more names in the Cruiserweight division in NXT because it kind of feels like it's Santos Escobar or nothing at the moment. So I think Blake Christian will do fantastic in NXT. I would suspect that he possibly could win the NXT Cruiserweight Championship at some point. Again, when it comes to the main roster, I think that might be difficult. I don't want to, rule anyone out. He hasn't even started yet, of course. But I wouldn't say it's so much of a slam dunk as, say, someone like Taya Valkyrie is as well. So that will certainly be interesting. When it comes to other names, of course, Eli Drake was in there. LA Knight. We've done a video talking about his transition to WWE and his debut on NXT. So be sure to check that out on the channel. A couple of other meaningful names was Bronson Rex Steiner, who of course is the son of former WCW and WWE Tag Team Champion Rick Steiner. He comes to WWE. He's 6 foot tall, 230 pounds. He was an All-American running back at Kennesaw State University. WWE have been chasing him for a long time. Looks to be like an absolute stud, doesn't he? Absolutely. And the other name that was certainly interesting and is getting a lot of traction at the moment is Parker Boudreaux, who stands 6'4", weighs 300 pounds. He is a former offensive lineman for the University of Central Florida, and the reason that everyone is interested in him right now is because Paul Heyman has dubbed him the next big thing. There are obvious comparisons. I mean, we don't have a picture of it, but there are obvious comparisons between Parker Boudreaux and Brock Lesnar because they look alike. I think those comparisons should stop there. I mean, I understand people saying, oh, he looks like Brock. That doesn't mean he's going to be Brock. Lots of people look like lots of people. It doesn't mean that they are that person. I think these comparisons eventually, if they keep going, are going to hurt Brock Lesnar. Yeah, I mean, let's see what he can do. Let's see what he can do. There is, I mean, arguably, the amount of pressure that's already on him is far bigger than most other, people that have no experience in pro wrestling. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. But certainly, as I said, a very big class, a lot of names in there, and certainly some big signings for WWE. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the former Impact Wrestling stars Taya Valkyrie, Blake Christian, Eli Drake, and others signing for WWE, being revealed as part of this latest WWE Performance Center class? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, Impact Wrestling, AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendations if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.